Alright, so as you can see, I have just installed Linux Mint here, and I will begin the skills exam now. I've actually tried this a couple times, but my last few tries ended up with my recording not working out, so this time I'll just record all the way through and then cut what I don't need. So what I have here is a completely fresh Linux Mint installation, and I'm going to install dynamips and dynagens on it to emulate two routers. And I am going to install CME onto those two routers, and in addition I have two Windows machines here which have CIPC installed on them, and I will use those as my phones. Alright, here we have a fresh install of Linux Mint. What's going on here? And I'm going to install guest tools first so that I can more conveniently do some of the other steps. Now, the IP addresses that we were required to use are 192.168.5. something. I am going to demonstrate how to set up a NAT network which uses that subnet. So first you go into File and then Preferences, and then you can go to Network and create a NAT. So I'm going to delete the one that's already existed, and I'm going to create a new one. NAT network 192.168.5.0/24, and it will support DHCP. Okay. I should have modified this first. Okay. On our network, we want this to be using a NAT network, and we want this NAT network to be the one we just set. In addition, we want to allow promiscuous mode for all. So in terms of devices, we want to enable drag and drop bidirectionally, and we want to share the clipboard bidirectionally. By the way, my student number is A01173578. So the numbers I will be using for my station, for my router, the IPs will be 192.168.5.78 and 192.168.5.79 respectively. So that's R1 and R2. Something else, but the easiest way is probably just to restart. It's pretty fast anyway, so restart. Our Linux Mint works, and we have checked that the IP address is in the right range, which is 192.168.5.0/24. If you want to install dynamips and dynagen, so sudo apt install, or maybe apt get install. Apt get install dynamips and dynagen. Dynamips would be our backend. It's our hypervisor. It's the thing that runs the VMs, while dynagen would be our front end. It's the thing that lets us interact with the dynamips, which is running in the background. So before we can actually use dynagen, we need dynamips and dynagens. We need to create a configuration file, and this configuration file allows us to define what router we're using. And at this point, we want to move the router, the image of the router, onto the drive as well. Copy that as well. And here we have C7200 Adventure Prize. This is our router's image. which we will copy here as well. So let's use 2 processors. Because with one processor, it's very difficult for you to get the right amount of idle PCs to run both routers. Or at least that's my experience. Now we're going to make a directory called router. And that's where we will put our ISO image as well as the configuration files for Dynagen. And here, let's create our file for Dynagens, and I'm going to name this file dynagen.conf because it's going to be the configuration file for Dynagen. Okay, this comes in 3 parts. The first part would be auto start equals false. That means it doesn't start by itself. And the second part would be where the port is. It's port 2000 for us. That's what we're going to use. And the working directory will not be /home/mint/router. It will be /home/charles/router. And the UDP port will stay the same. So this is our image. It will refer to the file C7200, which will also be in the /home/charles/router folder, and it will use a disk space of 252 megabytes and this idle PC. But we're going to remove this idle PC for now because we are going to use more than one router. And we don't want 2 routers running on the same idle PC, otherwise when you try to do something on both routers, they will conflict. As for router 1, it refers to the template of 7200 which we made above. That means it will have 256 megabytes and use this image. And also it has a console port on 2521. There's F00, which is tap 1, and everything else can stay the same. Now, if we want to have a second router, so we would create a copy of router 1 right below it. And change this to be called router 2. It will use the same template, but the console port will not be 2521, it will be 2522. And instead of using the tap 1 interface, it will be using the tap 2 interface. And that will be all for the configuration of Dynagen. And this will, of course, be named dynagen.conf. Sudo dynamips /h2000. I'm not running this in the background because on the 19.3 version of Mint and on some other versions of Linux, this does not run very well. Dynamips does not run very well on the background, so it's better to run this on its own terminal. That way we can tell if something goes wrong. Dynagen/router/dynagen.conf. Okay. Start R1. R1 started. Very good. At this point, we wanna get an idle PC for this so that we don't use up too much CPU. So, right. So start R1. Start R2. Idle PC get R2. Okay, so idle PC 2 worked out well, but idle PC 1 hopefully we get something better this time. If not, we'll just make do. There we go. This one looks good. Sudo apt get install bridge utils and UML utilities. There we go. Notice I'm using sudo here because you do need permission to install some of these things to have access to some of these directories. Alright, so it seems to have worked so far. Next, we want to set up the actual bridge, which involves modifying the /etc/network/interfaces file. But we want to make a copy of that first. So, oh, it's in etc. So we should probably sudo just to be safe /network/interfaces. And we're gonna name this interfaces date, year, months, day, second. So sudo z/etc/interface if we want to modify our network so that it has a bridge in addition to what it originally had. So here we want to have auto turn on the original interface, and in our case our original interface is EMP0S3. EMP0S3. And also bridge 0. If you want to turn on the bridge 0 as well by itself. Interface bridge 0, and we want to have it work as DHCP. Bridge ports, and it will be bridged to the EMP0S3 interface. In addition, we can have iface br0/0, which we can use to create a static address with an alias. This is an alias for the bridge, and it will use a static address of address 192.168.1. Let's give it an address of, I don't know, 11. No, let's give it an address of 200. Everything such was 200. And the net mask would be 255.255.255.0, and the gateway would be 192.168.1.5.78, because that's where our router is. Auto BR0/0. Well, don't mind it. Even though there was an error, as far as I can tell, if.conf shows me that I did get the IP addresses that I wanted, and we want to sudo brctl add interface to bridge 0 tap 1 to bridge 0 tap 2, and we want to ifconfig tap, this also needs sudo ifconfig tap 1 up, tap 2 up, ifconfig. Okay, so tap 1 and tap 2 are up. There are no IP addresses assigned so far, and that's what we're going to do next. Telnet, because there are no IP addresses, we can only use localhost, and this is basically the simulation of a console. Telnet. Localhost 2522. Alright, this is R2. While this is going, in order to install CME, you need to use TFTP, and in order to use TFTP on Linux Mint, you need to install it first. So sudo apt-get install TFTPD, sudo nano /etc/d/tftp, and there's nothing here, so if you're gonna post these settings inside. Right, so we're gonna make a directory. Right, because we're trying to make a directory in root, so we need to use sudo /tftp boot tp, and the reason why this is done like this is because in the TFTP settings I had earlier, I put server argument as /tftp, which means this is where they will look when they try to find the files for TFTP. Alright, and the files that we want to put in there will be cme.tar/tftp boot sudo. Also, I want to name this one as R2 to match this R2 here, and I want to name this one R1. Let's set up the IP address. And currently 0/0 is up due to DHCP. Int F 0/0. I don't want DHCP, I want IP address 192.168.5.78 255.255.255.0. IP address 192.168.5.79. And this should work. Once it's done, I can do right. Move the CME archive from Linux Mint onto these routers so I can install CME. Most likely, I had a similar problem when I did this first time. A lot of times, this kind of issue can only be solved with network restart or a complete restart of the PC. In this case, I'm going to restart Linux because it's just what I found to work better and more completely than restarting network services. So now we're going to install the CME command GUI and things. Now it's working. And I will be watching this go over and load for a while. Right, the first thing I want to show you is that as you can see, we had a lot of messages about trying to find a configuration file before. So the way to turn it off is no service config. Alright, so now I'm gonna set up the basic configuration for my CME. First, we want to activate the IP server because we want to make the GUI accessible over some sort of browser. Then we want to define the path because in this version of CME, the website is actually located under /GUI. In a lot of other versions, it's directly located under this 0. So it depends on your version. You can play around with it until it works, wherever your index of HTML is. And then there's telephoning service. We're going under telephoning service to assign a username. So web admin system name admin, and we're gonna assign that admin a password. So that's Cisco123. This is used for the GUI. DN web edit means we can edit DNs and other functions using the web GUI, and time web edit means we can edit time using the web GUI. We're going to set the max ePhones to 25. We're going to set the TFTP server for this CME to port 2000. And also, we are going to make the max number of lines 25, extensions lines, DNs, all the same thing, 25, and we're gonna have just a message of Charles Shen VoIP. Once we're done all that, we're gonna create the configuration file so that all the phones will receive it and know what's set up. It's 192.168.79. Looks good, and paste. Now that the CME is set up, we should be able to use the GUI. http://192.168.5.79/ccme.html. Username admin, password Cisco123. Okay, and we're in here as well. Now the next step would be to register our phones. And the way to add phones, there are two ways. You can add them using the Mac, which would be something like conf_d ephone1, and then you enter MAC address and you enter the MAC address, or you can let them register automatically. I'm going to let them register automatically because I have the GUI here. All this is going on. One thing you want to note is that in an actual production environment, you will want to adjust your firewall to allow these things through. But in a lab environment, we can just turn off the firewall. Nutshell, advanced firewall, set all profile state off. So you want to go to Preferences, Network, and set the TFTP server to the respective router. So in this case, it will be 579, and the other one should be 578. It's registering. There we go. You can see this one has registered. While this is going on, I'm going to show you how to set up a DN for each of these phones. So I'm going to go here. Add an extension. This is on R2, so the extension should be 7911. These settings, we don't need any of these yet. Okay. Okay. So phones, add. We found this phone here. We're gonna add it in, and we're gonna use this extension. Add, save changes. Okay. And we have successfully added a phone. There's no caller ID right now. The phone sequence number is 1. We just need to do the same thing for other phone. As you can see at this point, our phone right here has a DN of 7911. While this machine is getting prepared, I will show you how to configure a dial-peer for DN. So in this case, dial-peer voice 78, because we're going to call this dial-peer, we're calling towards R1, and R1 is holding the DNs with 78. VoIP, because we are going to be calling VoIP phones, not analog. And the destination pattern 78 dot dot, where dot dot stands for any number, because that's what the dial pattern, this is what the dial-peer is for. And of course we need a target, which is the IP of router 1, session target, IPv4 : and this needs to have this needs to be in this format in order for the target session to recognize that it is an IPv4 address rather than something like an IPv6 address. Okay, after some fiddling around, mostly just restarting the router, I have successfully registered this device as well. Now I'm gonna go into the GUI, admin, Cisco 123, and we can configure phones, add a new phone. It's been detected. This is going to be phone 1. Add, save changes. Okay. And we're going to configure a DN. This DN, because it's 78, so it will be 7811. Add. Okay. And I'm going to associate 7811 with the phone by going ephone 1, button 1, 1. That means the first DN associate with the first button. ephone DN 2, and let's say number 555 or 7812, and then I wanted to put it onto button 2. I could, or button 3 even. I could go button 3 2, and you can see button 1 is associated with 7811, and button 3 is associated with 7812. As you can see, now we have the buttons here. Just like before, we need to set up a dial-peer. So exit, dial-peer voice 7900 VoIP, and we want the destination pattern to be 79 dot dot. That means anything that starts with 79, and the last two digits can be anything they want. The session target 192.168.5.79. Oh no, I forgot to put IPv4. Alright, and codec G711 ULAW. Now, let's try to dial this phone from here. 11 dial 7811. and voila, it works. Show dial peer voice summary. You can see this has a dial peer heading towards 7900 with the dial pattern 79 ... which means 79 and then any 2 digits. Same thing here, 7800, and a dial pattern of 78 ... which means 78 and then any 2 digits, and the destination will be each other R1 and R2.